how you can bring flowers on the outside inside. So at this stage, Paul has talked you through the amazing garden that he's showcased, and I've taken inspiration from that garden, and I've just decided to show you something, how to bring flowers into your house. So what I'm going to create for you today is an urn display. So, and I'm using a really lovely range of summer flowers. So starting off with a container, and again, this could be a pot that you have at home. What I've done is just filled it with a little bit of water. It's a lovely garden style urn, again, keeping kind of natural. So with this, what I'm going to do is use chicken wire. So this is a galvanized chicken wire. You can pick it up in any local hardware. And this is to use as my mechanics instead of using floral foam or the Oasis that we would know. This allows us to create it in, I suppose, more in a environmental way. So for the piece of chicken wire, I've just cut a length. It's approximately about 12 inches long, and I'm just going to roll it up into what I'm going to call like a pillow shape. So just binding it together nice and loosely and just tucking the ends in, and this is going to create like our mechanics where flowers will come through. So I want to have a big enough piece that it will fill the bottom of the vase or the container. And again, this probably works a little bit better if it's not a glass vase, so we're using something that has a bit more colour in it, but you can do it into glass either. So once I have it pushed inside, if I need to, I can secure with a little bit of tape by hooking on and securing it like this. So basically all the tools that you'll really need is just a container, scissors and a knife or secateurs, and that's really it. And I suppose then what the idea is that you go out to your garden and you pick a really nice selection of what you have available. And again, it could be flowers that you pick up in your local flower shop, or or pick along the hedgerow some garden wild or forage flowers as well. So once that is secure and I know it's not going to move, I can start my design. So with this, I want to create just kind of really soft, natural movement. I have lots of texture, so I've picked a really lovely range, and I suppose the inspiration came from the cottage garden that Paul showed. Again, real natural movement, loads of textures, loads of flowers. And I've also introduced, so my mum very kindly led me to wander through her garden and pick some flowers. So for the foliage, what I like to do from start to finish on this, what I want to do is create a little bit of, I suppose, a framework or my outline. So like that, starting a sketch, I'm going to create a little outline, and I'll do that with foliage. So I've picked a nice range of greenery. So I have some silver birch and some beech, and just adding these in. So this is going to be, I suppose, a more natural movement, keeping them in the same design as the garden. The garden is, I suppose, informal. It has kind of soft lines that you just wander through. Again, there's like lots of that kind of layers and variety of textures. So with this, creating a little bit more placements, again, a mixture of foliage. It's always nice to have different varieties. So different leaf shapes, different tones of colour. So with this, with everything, I've made sure that I've cleaned all the foliage off the lower stems. I'm using a knife, but you can use a secateurs or scissors either. And when you're using the flowers, what you want to do is you want to cut the stem at a super angle. The reason that you want to do this is if I cut it flat, straight across, and I place this down into the container, basically what will happen is it will hit the bottom and it won't be able to take up much water. Therefore, the vase life of the flower is reduced. So we're cutting at an angle if you're using secateurs. You're opening up an awful lot more of the flower stem there, so it can take up more water. And when it's placed in and hitting the end of the vase, it can still take up that water through there. So adding some of this is the dark pittosporum, really nice to add a little bit of depth and a bit of colour going through. Again, from the garden as well, also this is the Senecio, really lovely. I love this grey, different kind of frond leaf. So adding this in. So you'll just see basically here, I'm just creating a very loose outline, getting an idea to have a nice flow through the design, and placing flower, the flower placements or the foliage placement right to the back, and also then focus into the front. So again, a little bit of Senecio. So again, this is just a case of slowly building up different lines and ideas, creating height where you want to create a little bit of height, and depth coming through. So the chicken wire then allows me to place everything, and it sits nice and gently. I'm not placing all the flowers to one side. I can get them moving through, and they don't really move after that. So they just all lock in together, and it's nice and balanced, and we can get a nice space through. So again, this is rubus, really nice. So the wineberry, as we also call it. And again, everything nice, clean stems, no leaves going into the water. So you'll just see slowly here as I build up. Just turn around and show you now. So it's very simple, with just a little bit of greenery that I've created my outline. So this is my starting point, my foundation, and then I'm going to build up from here. So what I've chosen is a lovely summery mix. So again, taking inspiration from Paul's garden. So I have some really nice, actually another little bit of element of greenery. This is the lovely scented mint, so it's always nice to add a few little bits of elements that will have, I suppose, another dimension. So the scent of, I have a lovely scented stock to come as well, but the mint also really refreshing, feels a little bit like summer. And also when you have flowers in the house and the scent is in the room, it always just adds a little bit of a mood booster as well. So as we add in here, so I'm going to start with a little bit of, this is again thistle or eryngium. I'm going to place a few lower pieces down. So this is just to build up, I suppose, my colour. This is really nice vibrant colour, but also lots of layers of texture. So we're going to build up through here. So just slowly, slowly building up. So we go with, these are amazing Irish grown scented stock. Really lovely. We'll add that extra dimension of scent, but also just nice to have some Irish grown flowers as well. Again, I'm conscious of cleaning all the stems down. So we've all been spending a lot more time in our gardens over the past couple of weeks and months through COVID. So we've all learned to enjoy what's there. And sometimes it's just about bringing those few extra little flowers outside. So sometimes it's just about having one flower in a little bud vase, or it could be just a few little things. Or if you're on a walk, maybe out in the countryside, take a few little stems to bring home and enjoy. Again, this is Irish phlox, really lovely, nice purple lavender flowers. So colour choice here, I've kind of gone with a lot of the lavenders. For me, summer is probably more the softer pinks, the lavenders, the white hues. As a redhead, I'm probably nearly more veer towards earthy colours myself for, clothes or for different things. But I have to say, summer for me is always about those soft pastel tones. Just kind of lifts the mood a little bit. So with placements here, you just see I'm building up, kind of making the movement right the way through, and then I'll let it trail out this way. Flowers again in towards the back, so I have balance in the design and that it's not going to tilt forward, so all your flowers are not placed in here. We're making sure we're using the full depth of the container. So again, what we do was take inspiration. This is kind of from that garden, that the movement of different tiers and different levels. We can see it's kind of like tall herbaceous borders of delphiniums and different things, and then we layer it right the way down. Again, this is a lovely bit of scented jasmine just to flow through. I'm going to use some grasses and some ferns as well. So grasses, I have the lovely, this is a Panicum fountain grass, but also we see those lovely grasses that grow along the hedgerows and the roads. But again, just adds a little bit of a playful mood through the design. A little bit of softness. So we want to create to build up. And I have these ferns, again, I clipped these from a little bit of a hedgerow, but I just love the colour tone that kind of comes through. Again, nice soft movement and flow. And again, everything clean down. As I place in, I'm making sure I have them well down, that are in through the chicken wire, but making sure it's hitting the water source right down into the design. Again, another one of these gorgeous stock. So I'm recessing a little bit, so a little bit more. When I come down towards the front, I want the shorter stems down here. And again, I'm wary that I've got some areas to build up, but it's just a slow process of adding one at a time. Don't panic. A lot of times when we start a design, don't know where to begin. So that idea of the foliage going first as your foundation, and now we're just going to add in and add in. If you get a little bit afraid or not sure where to go, take your time, step away from it and come back. I often find that sometimes when I'm doing larger pieces, you're kind of saying, where do I go next? But take a little bit of step back away and then come back to it. So again, branching of this lovely jasmine will add a lovely trail, but also nice movement down towards the front. And that's what we want to do, is just kind of say, we're trying to take inspiration from that garden, that you kind of meander through the gardens all the way through, so that your eye will meander through the design and tip on little points there and say, oh, look at that little movement here of the grass or the little details. So these are heuchera. So again, just the flower off the heuchera, which is a lovely, really deep, it's like the Pittosporum, like a really deep tone. So again, it's just adding those little soft touches right the way through. And again, making sure I'm cutting everything and making sure it's cut well at an angle. So I have a few little pieces of lavender, again, super popular in the garden at the moment, always adds that another little dimension of scent. And again, always lovely to have lavender, I think, in the garden for the bees. We always know that we know now the bees are so important to us that we want to keep them happy, keep them in the garden, keep them pollinating. So lavender is one that's really, really good to have for them in the garden. but also really nice to have, even if it's a few little stems beside the bed, to induce kind of good sleep at the moment. So as we're just building up, you can just see I'm kind of meandering all the way through. Again, everything just placed nice and loosely. You'll also notice that you can't really see the mechanics. The chicken wire is always handy for that way. That green chicken wire, you don't notice the mechanic there. You're not trying to hide a piece of oasis in the design. So this one here is Stransia, another really lovely garden flower. Again, just small little florets. And what I suppose subconsciously is something as a florist I probably do as in day-to-day running a flower shop, picking different varieties that we get different shapes, different forms within the design. So something like the Trachelium here, again, a lovely Irish grower for this one. So something that's nice and flat, as opposed to kind of something that's again more of a spear shape of flowers, that we're getting different shapes and forms right the way through the design. It creates more interest, it creates more interest, it just more, it makes the design a little bit more, I suppose, kind of unusual. So we have the poppy seeds, again, featured lovely in the garden. And again, these are really, really nice. Adding that little bit of lime green into the texture there. These guys will dry out actually, which is another popular trend at the moment, the dry flowers. These are lovely to have in the garden. They also add super little bit of detail into the design. Now, the last of the summer peonies. These guys are kind of coming to an end, but always just one of my favourites to have. I'm going to place them quite nice down low within the design. They become a really strong feature. And again, removing all the lower flowers or all the lower leaves so that the energy goes into the flower as opposed into the greenery. So this is bringing the introduction of pink in there. I have a few little spaces to fill, but as we go along we can fill them up as we go through the design. Another one that's featured in the garden actually, and this is another variety of Thistle, Echinops. Really, really lovely. Again, similar in form to the poppy seed, but again, that little playful movement. This is one here in flower, which is actually really lovely. I love this kind of soft tone that comes to it. Again, clean it in all the stems, but really nice mixed variety. And this is kind of on the gardens should be, you know, I suppose the lushness and the variety that was in the garden that Paul showed. That's what I'm trying to kind of suppose recreate through this design. There's a lot of different varieties, but having said that, sometimes it's just nice to have that little mix. So as you can see there, building up super nice there. I'm just going to fill out some extra spaces. I will make sure that I cover the back of the design. Depending on where this is going to be placed, I'm making this front facing, but if I was to place it in the center of a large round table, I'd be covering the back. So I suppose always be conscious of where you're going to place your flower design and where it's going to be sitting. Then for care afterwards of this, I will be conscious of topping it up with water and making sure the vase is full, making sure when I place it on maybe like a good wooden table, I'm putting a placemat underneath so you don't get a water circle underneath. I would bring it to the sink, top it up with water, and also a water sprayer. So your water sprayer, your water mister, making sure you're keeping the arrangement hydrated, not in direct sunlight, just to keep it lasting that little bit longer. And also, I suppose, as I said, I took a wander around my mum's garden to pick some elements, and I did that yesterday. So that if you are using garden flowers, that you pick them the night before you'd like to make the arrangement. Then you have a clean bucket or a clean vase, and you make sure you just maybe rinse it out with some bleach, and then rinse that bleach out, and then from there cut the stems that you've gathered. So from the garden, if it was the elements of the lavender, make sure you remove all the leaves out, lower leaves off, and cut them, and then leave them in water for 3 to 4 hours, or ideally overnight. Same with foliage, if you're picking foliage from to use, that you leave it overnight sitting in water in a dark, cool space, and that way the flowers are fully hydrated for when you might like to arrange them or to put them into the house. They need that little bit of time to absorb an awful lot of water so that they have the water to keep on going and keep on blooming for you. So I'm just going to add in again a few more little pieces here. Trachelium, and lovely Scabiosa. So again, beautiful white Scabiosa. This is just a matter of them building up, seeing where maybe I have a little gap or use placement. And again, that's where I was always kind of conscious of maybe where we're walking to pass the design. So in my idea, this would be nice at a hall table as you walk in and you just see it straight in front of you. And I'm kind of conscious that it's more front facing, the design is to the front. And then little pieces of grass keeps us flowing through. Now to bring a little bit of more elements that were in the garden with Paul. So again, the alliums, so these again, the onion family, love these guys. They do smell a little bit oniony when you cut the stems, but again, they add that little pops, these little kind of, I suppose, like little pom-poms, little fun pieces that will come through and adding a little bit of height, but also a little bit of depth of colour through. And then I have some, again, this is a beautiful Irish Grown spray, Sweet William. So I want to add a strong pop of colour. So we noticed in the garden that there was some beautiful pops of colour. So either kind of a little bit of yellow or a little bit of orange, like an accent. And the colour just, you know, adds a little bit of more vibrancy, adds a little more stem. So again, I'm breaking this stem down into 2 pieces so I can use both by cutting it at a point. So in between. So this strong bolt of colour will add a little strong pop of colour actually. Add some depth. I think it's always nice to just introduce that. So it's the same with a lime green. Another one, the garden favourite, this Alchemia Mollis. Again, I'm just going to take the centre out of this so it's a little bit softer. So, but lime green is always a really lovely binding colour. It's one of my favourite colours. I suppose it's our brand colour here in the shop, and we have a super big lime green door here. And it's lovely just as a backdrop for photos, but also lime green always is just a softness. It binds things together, it just adds freshness, I think, always as well. So as we add in, you'll see that kind of on strong bolts of colour, change the design a little bit, but I think it just adds that little bit of vibrancy, which I love. And I have some lovely delphiniums as well, lovely blue delphiniums, and again, trimming everything down, but we have it clear. So now I'm going to fill in. So I hope that through this you might be able to recreate either something this size, or even kind of if it's 1 or 2 buds, but also that encourages you to go out to the garden to see what you have and what you can enjoy, or maybe what you can plan for next year. I think we all kind of went on a big seed, you know, we all tried, it was like the seeds were sold out in the supermarket, but we all started to plant seeds and look at our garden in a new way. And I suppose what I want to say is then kind of go, how do you bring that little bit of those flowers back into the house and to enjoy them? Because a lot of people do say they're not 100% sure what to do with them or how to arrange them. So it's always a pleasure of mine to teach. We do classes, and it's always lovely to see people creating. A lot of people have that fear before they start, they're not sure where to go. And it's, you know, everyone can learn where, you know, to create a design. And each one will always be different. We have a great team here, but I'll always figure out that every flower tilts a different way. No 2 designers in our shop will ever create the exact same arrangement, because flowers are never the same, they're all individual. So, but when we teach classes, it's great. Everyone creates something beautiful to go home with, and they're always amazed that they actually got to finish it. And I think that's kind of the enjoyment for me, is to see that, kind of going to see people's confidence grow and say, well, actually I can do this again. I can bring this home, and I can, I'll definitely try it again. So it's just about trying, and then kind of just and enjoying it. And if we don't get it right, well, maybe next week we can try another one and do a little bit something that's a little bit different. So I'm just adding in the final few touches here. I'm just going to again make sure I have it covered in towards the back, that if wherever we're placing it, that there's no visible gaps to be seen. I also have 1 or 2 extra little pieces of hokra, and again a little bit of jasmine, just to add in these beautiful arcing stems. And this is what sometimes when we buy flowers from a florist or from a supermarket, they're straight up, they're graded to be perfect stems, whereas from a garden we'll always find these wandering meanderings stems, like the Trails of Jasmine. I find kind of for weddings there's an awful lot of a natural or garden style is definitely more popular at the moment. And for us to find these little treasures in a garden that like a bowing stem, or kind of something like that, hokra there that bows down, the jasmine that trails, you can't really buy that from the standard bunches. What you find that is in more the natural growth, so forage piece of greenery, or those little bits that you find as you wander through a garden. And that's what we kind of say, to bring the outside in is what you want to do, is in more of a natural stem. So there we have it go. That's the finished design there. So I hope I have inspired you to create something wonderful at home, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Inside Out show.